Penguin Random House Canada presents Solitaria, a novel by Eliana Alves Cruz, translated by Benjamin Brooks, read for you by Madeline Claude. For my Aunt Maria da Gloria, Dodo, whose face I never saw, and about whom all I know is that work never set her free. First part, Mabel. Backyard. My, you need to free yourself from those people. You don't owe them anything. The opposite, actually. My, it's me, Mabel, your daughter. Don't be afraid to stand up to these people who've never cleaned their own toilet. The sun was high. A hot, unrelenting wind blew like a flamethrower. In our small house's backyard, Mai was hanging out clothes. Because of the heat, useful for drying clothes faster and keeping the colors vibrant, each time she hung a piece of clothing on the clothesline, sweat dripped off the shirt, the pants, the towel, and along with it came tears that she tried and failed to disguise. We were there in a kind of dance among the clothes, waving in the hot wind of the outskirts of the city, a dance of hide and reveal. I was tense, not disguising my anger or leaving anything out. We had already been out there for a while, and I used every argument I could to try to make her understand that she had to stand up to her former employers. She stopped what she was doing for half a second and lowered her head, with her arms in the air hanging up the scrubs with my name embroidered on them. Then she kept on stretching, hanging, pinning, closing herself into a silence that agonized me. I noticed the patient way she bent to get the clothes. It was as if, in stretching out the sheets, the pillowcases and towels on the long lines that formed a kind of web from one end of the yard to the other, she was also hanging out her memories and her thoughts. She always did this, used housework to settle her runaway emotions. I, on the other hand, didn't stretch anything. I was short on patience. Breath, talk, thoughts, everything punctuated by a bitter and repressed feeling that overflowed more than the tank full of soaking clothes. My phone vibrated. It had been in all the papers. The woman for whom my mother had worked for more than 20 years had just been indicted for a terrible crime. The press had discovered that Donna Eunice, the former employee of the accused, could have key information to help clarify the incident. They had discovered my number too, and my phone hadn't stopped ringing since. What am I going to do about all these people? You need to report them, to say something. You're not a slave. She turned to face me, furious. From the distance where she stood, I felt her stare like a slap in the face. I went too far. I know that today. I was almost losing my mind, and so as not to say anything that would leave her even more offended than she already seemed to be, I left stomping my feet and waving my arms in despair. I passed Jurangir, leaning against the doorway, watching everything in the yard with his arms crossed. He gave me a resigned look, as if to say, "Didn't I tell you?" Mabel. I heard my mother's voice, but I didn't turn to look at her face. The money that you asked for to help with your textbooks is in the blue container on top of the fridge. It's hard to forget that we have no fortune to cover the course materials that are just as expensive as the tuition for medical school itself. But it's easy to remember that this isn't an obstacle when there's someone like my mother, Eunice, by my side. In a little corner of the yard were religious icons that my grandmother was very devoted to. If today I am what she had wanted so much, this, without a doubt, is because of my mother's job well done. I felt my anguished heart soften. Ever since I was very small, we had agreed we wouldn't let the day end holding on to hurt feelings between each other. "Can I have your blessing, Mai?" It was the way I found to say, "Mai, forgive me, I love you." "God bless you, daughter." It was the way she found to say, "Me too." I'll never be able to get those images out of my head. On the day of the tragedy, I entered the Golden Plate building as all the confusion was mounting. João Pedro, the older son of Jurandir, my stepfather and ex-doorman of that building, was sitting in a wicker chair in the entrance hall. He had seen the whole thing and he was beside himself. We'd known each other almost our entire lives. He was my first love, and I think I was his. The start of youth kind of love. We had played and discovered a lot together on that patio, the same one that sometimes served as a yard for the rich. It still bore the fresh blood marks from the small body, almost 4 years in age, that had fallen from the 10th floor earlier that afternoon. But before that child, others populated this property and this story. Floor plan. Why is she wearing heels inside the house? This was the first thing I thought when I entered that enormous apartment sometime between 1998 and 1999. I would only register all the details of the floor plan afterwards, because I could not take my eyes off those long pink legs. My ears, they only registered the click-clack of the high heels, first on the marble entryway, then on the pristine floorboards of the living room, smelling like wax and shining in the clear light coming through a gigantic window that separated the room from the terrace. Next in the enormous hallway, and lastly on the kitchen ceramic tile floor. Mai only wore heels when she went out with my pie. At home, we wore flip-flops or nothing. It's so nice to not wear shoes, to stand barefoot on the ground. I'd seen rich people wear high heels inside the house only on soap operas, and that's just what this house looked like, a movie set. There was something artificial about it that I didn't know how to place. The woman's walk was rushed and uptight, making that sound even more irritating. I was so young and I couldn't cast my gaze much higher than her legs, which stopped moving near the refrigerator, but Mai and I had to keep going ahead up to a white door in the service area. When the door opened, Mai said in a low voice, "Don't come out until I come back." And she closed the door, leaving me there in the dark. Terror overtook me. It wasn't loneliness or even fear of the dark. It was something bigger. What I felt sitting there on the narrow bed in that room still doesn't have a name. For me, it lasted an eternity, but it wasn't more than 5 minutes. It was so hot, one of those days that easily pass 100 degrees, and Mai came running back to turn on the light and the fan. She was so breathless and terrified that she practically threw me back into the room, took a few toys we had brought from the backpack, turned the TV to some cartoon, repeated that I shouldn't come out under any circumstances, and went rushing back to talk to the woman of the house. She had been working there only a short time, and I was making my first appearance in the elegant luxury condo that took up an entire floor in one of the fanciest neighborhoods in the city. I put my ear against the door to try to hear what they were saying, but I could only make out chopped sentences. "Why didn't you come in through the back? Am I the one who has to open the door for you? It's complicated this way, Eunice. It's just for today, Miss Lucia. It's just... But I told you that..." My grandmother wasn't well and couldn't take care of me. There was no other way. I would need to stay with my mother at work for about 4 days. Then she would switch with the other maid and get time off. Miss Lucia was never without a maid in the house. Mamai was sad. She had cried the whole way on the train, running her fingers over the tiny white beads of a rosary hidden in her purse. She got even more worked up when she reached the bottom of the bag, the inner and outer pockets, and realized she'd forgotten the keys to the service area door. "Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope," she murmured. The pack train was a kind of safe harbor. Even while standing and tightly packed, people could collapse in exhaustion. In the car's hard and loud rumbling, they immersed themselves in their misfortunes or their small joys. Leaning against the support rails, they flirted, they confided, they made lifelong friends and enemies too. People could buy everything on the train: batteries, flashlights, umbrellas, chocolate, candy.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?